Africa-Cuba International Solidarity Summit as the ANC in January this year, a very successful summit. We continue to mobilize internationally in support of the people of Western Sahara, who are struggling against illegal occupation of their land, and we are working within the African Union to ensure that Africa's last colony is finally liberated. Our ANC and South Africa have also actively supported the South African government in its efforts to bring about justice and self-determination for the Palestinian people. Our position on Palestine has always been clear, consistent, and convergent with the international community. And it's not a position that began on the 8th of October. It's a position that has been long held in the bonds of international solidarity. We continue to support all efforts aimed at the establishment of a viable, contiguous Palestinian state existing side by side in peace with Israel within the internationally recognized 1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as the capital of Palestine. All of this in line with a number of relevant United Nations resolutions as well as international law. The case that South Africa brought against Israel at the International Court of Justice was in keeping with our obligations under the Geneva Convention to ensure no nation can continue to commit genocide with impunity. As the ANC, we have mobilized the international community against what we believe are the genocidal acts of Israel against the Palestinian people in Gaza, and strongly condemned the killing of over 30,000 Palestinian civilians, most of whom were women and children. The actual death toll, as you know, is far higher, as thousands remain trapped under the rubble and unaccounted for. We have fully supported the second approach made by our government to the ICJ concerning the matter of starvation of the Palestinian people. The court granted South Africa's urgent request of the 6th of March this year for further provisional measures to prevent Israel from causing irreparable harm to the rights invoked by South Africa under the 1948 Genocide Convention in respect of the ongoing siege of Gaza. The purpose of our Priority 6 in the African National Congress Manifesto is to not only build a better Africa and a better world by supporting development and peace efforts on our continent and across the world, but in addition, to strengthen trade and investment links with other countries. This agenda includes strengthening the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, enhancing the BRICS program for an outcome-based BRICS agenda that benefits the entire African continent, promoting peace, security, democracy, and socio-economic development in the Southern African Development Community and other parts of the continent, as well as increasing the voice of developing countries in multilateral institutions and working with all other countries in the fight against climate change, global poverty and inequality in line with applicable international resolutions. As a progressive organization with modern ideas such as support for media freedom and freedom of expression, we will continue to lobby and mobilize through party-to-party relations and strive for growth by ensuring that our policies on regional integration cover the movement of goods and people and resolve the troubling issues of undocumented migration. Through these priorities, we will work toward achieving our National Development Plan 2030 objectives to eliminate poverty and reduce inequality in our country. Through our manifesto, we as the African National Congress make a solemn pledge to our people of South Africa that we will drive faster progress, drive more action, have greater accountability, ensure citizen engagement, and better implementation of our plans. In addition to advancing the agenda of a better Africa and a better world over the next 5 years, our organization, the African National Congress, will recommit South Africa to work with others to take forward its responsibilities in the fight against the effects of climate change, of global poverty, and of inequality, again in line with applicable international resolutions. We will also work towards strengthening our country's development cooperation and institutional frameworks to tackle and support tackling development challenges in Africa and in the Global South, in keeping with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals agenda and our own African Union Agenda 2063. Our organization supports all efforts to deepen our trade and investment relations with both developing and developed economies, in line with the key provisions of the National Development Plan. As the ANC, we would like to see the implementation of the AfCFTA, which will promote cross-border infrastructure, tourism, agriculture, and manufacturing value chains through industrialization and minerals beneficiation in our own region, and through increasing the levels of South African manufacturing and value-added exports to the rest of the continent. South Africa has already shown action in these commitments through the free trade that has already begun between ourselves and the Republic of Ghana, and which we hope will also extend to Kenya and several other countries across the African continent. We've also shown our commitment to ensuring greater industrialization and manufacturing capacity through agreements we share in the automotive sector with countries such as Lesotho, and agreements still being discussed with Nigeria and other countries intent on creating an automotive sector. We believe that the world is changing for better. And in the sense of internationalism, we believe through our hard work as the African National Congress and the people and government of South Africa, we will indeed ensure that we achieve peace, friendship, and development throughout the world. And we as the ANC thank you for joining us on this briefing on our Goal 6 in our manifesto. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Naledi. You can tell that it's a statement read out by the chief diplomat of South Africa to the world. But I will now turn to members of the media, and Comrade Orbit and Alvin, you're happy to take questions and answers. Yes, thank you very much. I'm seeing Luma there, Million Guardian. I'm also seeing, am I putting you on the spot? I'm also seeing Karen. Hi, Karen. Can I start with you and then move to my sister to your left, and then we'll come back this side. Thank you.
Thank you. I will stand up Minister, thanks for the briefing. I have 3 questions.
Certainly not in the capacity of the minister. Comrade.
On issues that, in the briefing, the one was on the South Africa's role in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. In your other life, the Director General, your colleague, paid a visit to Ukraine. I'm just curious to know, the conflict seems to be escalating. Is there a one, you made an interesting remark. You say the world is changing for the better. A lot of people seem to disagree. There's elections this year, as the world's a little bit in upheaval. Maybe just tell me what's the source of your optimism. Explain that to me. I thought that was an interesting remark. And the last question is, says ANC comrade. The ANC, you say, is the view of the ANC on Palestine is a long-held view, and yet October was a crunch time, and we have elections coming up. And I'm just wondering, is the ANC's view, do you find that it's winning the ANC a lot of support, or especially from the ANC's old base, traditional support base, or is it losing? Because I know some churches, some people in churches don't disagree with this view, with the ANC's view, some churches. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, over to you, my sister.
My name is Tanda Michael from the Business Day. Just to the Minister, so in your other life, a few weeks ago, you were on the tour of the US, where you explained South Africa's foreign policy to various stakeholders that side. And you did mention that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is willing to come to South Africa and that there are plans for him to come. Could you just expand on those plans, when it will happen, or when it's likely to happen, and what would he be doing here? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to turn to somebody else who has a question. I'm more than happy to allow Comrade Naledi to respond to those questions. Lunga?
Okay, well,
Yes,
thank you very much.
thank you.
My name is mine is just a simple one, on just finding out from the Minister in the capacity of an ANC employee to say, does she think that the decision taken by the President to deploy the soldiers in Congo was the right one?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
To deploy the soldiers in the Congo. Yes. Okay.
Was the right decision, considering that there's now reports that some of them were surrendered and some of them they are equipped and all that. So what is the ANC position on that? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. We will have the second round. I'm going to ask Comrade Naledi. Clearly, my colleagues in the media, Comrade Naledi and Comrade Obert and Alvin, are turning this into a government briefing. But we will allow that because we are the incumbent governing party. Allow Comrade Naledi to reflect on those issues, and then we'll come back to the second round. Thank you.
Yeah. No, the ANC is in government, so you're the governing party.
Yeah, I want to ask you to...
So you will have to take these questions.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Right. Firstly, on the Russia-Ukraine matter, as I indicated, we've been participating, I think I've stated this before, you'd be aware, in the various meetings that have deliberated on the 10-point peace plan presented by President Zelensky to many countries that they've asked to be part of these discussions. We began initially as 9 countries. It's now grown to much more, involving several other European countries that are part of these meetings. Essentially, I believe that we've reached a point where we need to get Russia into the room. The meeting in Kiev went well. Prior to it, we had put to Ukraine that we believe we now, at the level of those who've been discussing the peace plan, need to have a meeting where Russia sends its own officials to comment both on what is proposed but also what their proposals might be. Because we don't believe it serves a useful goal to just continue discussing among ourselves the same document. So the Ukrainians are considering it, and we'll see. We've already approached Russia on this. Also, not absolutely certain acceptance, but no, not a rejection. So we continue with those engagements, and South Africa is playing a very critical role of facilitator because we're the one country that can speak to both leaders. And I think that's a really important point. On the support for the ANC on the Palestinian issue, I think people would look at much more than that in deciding support, but there are many who share our commitment to the just cause of the people of Palestine. So I'm sure those who support that cause cannot vote for a party that wouldn't, or that does not. I also don't quite agree when you say churches and seem to imply all. I suppose you're referring to Christian churches, I'm not sure, because I will invite you to a public meeting at a church that I will be addressing soon, which is led by one of the persons that accompanied the delegation led by Reverend Frank Chikani, which was a group of church leaders who decided to spend Xmas with Christians in Palestine. And I'm sure you'd have seen some of the coverage of that. So what has actually happened is, out of what they experienced, several churches are asking me to come and make a presentation on the issue of Palestine and how they might assist in resolving what is a very difficult challenge. You would also have seen recently in the Easter period that more Christians and Muslims and other groupings were talking to each other in the context of Palestine. So I think people are concerned more and more about peace. And human beings who are humane are worried about what they're seeing in Gaza and West Bank. On the business day question, and of course I'm not saying all churches are in agreement. There is huge dispute, and even some of the parties that have a religious mantle to them are very strong supporters of Israel. On the visit to South Africa, President Zelensky, for many, many months, has indicated to President Ramaphosa his keenness to visit South Africa. This was reiterated by my colleague, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, when he came here in February this year. Why? He says he wishes to establish stronger trade links with South Africa, and also wishes to discuss the nature of relationship that he hopes will ensue once this matter of the war has been settled. They're very interested in matters of agriculture, particularly, given their role in food security in the world, you know, with wheat, that they play a very important role on the African continent. And they wish to discuss, as a beginning with South Africa, how this role might be enhanced and what support they might provide in increasing food security that is Africa-led and Africa-generated. Yes, I would have real difficulty in a meeting publicly saying, I think President Ramaphosa was wrong on this one. But with this one, I'm quite comfortable to say, yes, I believe he's right, because I believe it would have been extremely wrong of President Ramaphosa in a SADC meeting to say to the other SADC countries, you can have a SADC mission to DRC, but South Africa, the largest economy, largest military force, will not be part of it. It just couldn't happen. So South Africa had no choice but to be part. It is not South Africa on its own sending troops. It is South Africa, Malawi, Zambia, Tanzania at present. It's a SADC mission. It's not a South African mission. And I believe that South Africa has an important role to play in bringing peace to the DRC. I believe what should happen alongside the military deployment, and I believe that will ensue soon, is there should be a diplomatic track as well. And we will be setting that in motion in support of Angola's role as facilitator between DRC and Rwanda. So I believe it's the correct decision for South Africa. I think for South Africa to have excluded itself on such an important issue of peace and security would be really a huge, huge error. In particular, because we're the one region that has not as yet been overrun by rebel forces or extremist groupings, we're still limited to just 2 countries in SADC. If we have an expansion of that, through being weak-kneed about security, we will rue the day and we'll see a Sahel in SADC, which we don't want. Oh, sorry. Thank you. There you go. You didn't think I can bend at 78?
Yeah, but I had to spare you that. Thank you very much, Comrade Naledi. I did see a hand. Was that, is this Junior? Yes. Yeah. There's Junior, and there's Heidi, and there's my brother there at the back, and then Karim again. Karim. Is it a follow-up?
No, the question of why the world is better off now than it was.
Oh, yes, sorry.
I just want to understand with you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's fine. We'll come back to that. Let me take the other questions.
Okay.
And if there are any WhatsApp questions as well.
Junior Commander from Newsroom Africa. Speaking of international relations, the IEC had indicated that it was not able to register South Africans abroad in 3 countries. I think it was Ukraine, South Sudan, and another country, I'm not sure which one. Has that situation been resolved? Are those South Africans in those countries going to be able to vote come the 29th of May? Also, with this question, I've been emboldened by the Minister/Comrade Naledi Pandor, who said the ANC is a governing party, so it should answer such questions. Yesterday, we saw one of the ANC leaders, Nosibio Mapisa-Ngabula, handing herself over to the police and basically applying for bail, being granted the bail. But in that bail application, she spoke about the chief whip of the ANC in Parliament basically being at the heart of her demise. Has the ANC been informed of this seeming plot by the chief whip in Parliament, and what is the ANC's stance on this? And the ANC as well this week basically...
Just whilst we're on that, Junior, sorry. I'm going to ask my left side panel to respond to that. These questions are not going to be responded by Comrade Naledi alone, particularly the question you've just advanced. But the IR subcommittee can speak to it because these are members of the National Executive Committee to articulate our official position on based on the statement that the ANC has released.
I wasn't advocating open sesame.
I understand. But we just had to ask. Okay, just a last question. Part of the reason why the ANC is hosting these briefings is just to tell South Africans this is the promises that we made to you South Africans, and this is how we're going to fulfill them. But there seems to be other challenges facing the party. Like this week, the party lost in court. The court found that the party was in contempt by not handing over all of its cadre deployment records. It's a serious crime. It's a serious judgment by the courts. We saw former President Jacob Zuma going to jail for being in contempt of court. What does the ANC have to say to South Africans if the governing party is basically failing to comply with the court order? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those 2 questions are going to be responded to by my comrades to my left. Those 2 questions. And then can I move on to the next person?
Yes,
Heidi? Yes.
Yes, Junior asked very important questions. I just have one question for Minister Pandor. Do you think that South Africa's position, I've asked this before, but perhaps having come from Washington, you can just shed some more light on this. Do you think South Africa's position on Palestine has weakened your relationship with the US? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heidi. We move on to, I did see my brother over there at the back.
Thank you very much. My name is Peter Advocacy from the CDC. My question is related to the minister. Minister Pandor, Rwanda is commemorating 30 years since genocide in 1984. Yes, that's right. Is Pretoria attending the event? And also, how important is this event 30 years from? Thank you.
Are you able to get that, Comrade Naledi? Okay, thanks very much. The event, I really just wanted...
I've got it.
You got it. Okay, that's fine. Can we then take the last 10, after which we are going to adjourn after the responses have been given by the panel? I've got a hand over there next to Junior Kumalu.
Good afternoon, I'm Kyle from Eyewitness News. Minister, you were previously quoted as saying any South Africans who are fighting in the Israeli Defense Force would be arrested upon return to South Africa, and someone threatened that their citizenship would be revoked as well. What sort of monitoring mechanisms are in place to sort of get a sense in Israel about how many South Africans are in the Defense Force, when there's been a return of any of them to South Africa, and what charges they'd face in South Africa if prosecution were to go ahead? If we could get a sense of that. If you have a tally as well, if possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. And do I have anything on WhatsApp? Okay, you can just read it out, Bonnie.
It's a question from Tim Dongan of Russia Today. Can Minister Pandor please shed some light or reflect on her recent visit to the United States of America? And can she please give a comment on the developments in Russia with regards to the recent Crocus City Hall terrorist attack that led to the death of 140 people? As some South Africans and some people in Africa have complained that they see and hear more of the ANC stance on Palestine and less on the regional issues of conflict. And also comments on Iran and Israel conflict, and Senegal's Bassirou Diomaye being one of the youngest presidents in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then over to the panel. I will ask Comrade Naledi to close us out, because I think a number of questions are directed at her. And I'll ask Comrade Alvin and Comrade Orbit to reflect on matters that are organizational in nature. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Greetings to all of you once more. Before I comment on those organizational matters, we just wanted to emphasize to South Africans why we are involved in pursuance of international relations and why are we there as South Africa. We are not an island, no country is an island. We're interlinked, intertwined by various aspects. We trade with each other. Some of the goods that we manufacture in South Africa needs markets elsewhere. Also their goods, they also need a market in South Africa. So in doing so, we are looking at the 6 points in the manifesto, which is in Africa, the pursuance of peace and stability is fundamental, as read out in the statement by Comrade Naledi, that if there's no peace, it means we can't then pursue the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement. And all efforts of bringing peace will obviously go to the armies, and then the money that's supposed to be used for development, it ends up having to go and support armies that are in conflict or situations that are in conflict. So the pursuance of peace in Africa is fundamental for us to trade amongst ourselves, but also to start developing our infrastructure so that movement of goods and people is made easier as we do so. And I think the 6 points in the manifesto speak for itself, that if you vote for the African National Congress, that's what you want to pursue and succeed in achieving. The other issue that also I wanted to raise on the building Africa in the world, we are part of the global nations. We are members of the AU and many other global organizations. But the global south has not been as organized, particularly the voice of parties and the movements in the global south. So we have just recently, led by the SG of the African National Congress, Comrade Fikile Mbalula, established what we call the Inter-Party Forum against colonialism practices, which is Latin America, Africa, and Asia and the Middle East, all progressive organizations and the progressive internationalism pursuance is there to then begin to look at Global South and appreciate BRICS, which is now emerging as that Global South organization, that whatever efforts that they do, we need to support them so that trade between the three continents can also begin to relook and then begin to then see what is it that arrangements needs to be so that then we can then pursue our national interest as South Africa in that global stage, and so that South Africans can also now begin to prosper as the ANC strategy and tactics does say that we are building a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and a prosperous society. So all these things that we are doing is to do so. And then lastly, obviously we are involved in the international solidarity, support those who are still, unfortunately, in bondages of oppression, the Palestine, Western Sahara, and Cuba with the blockade, because we are the beneficiary of that international solidarity ourselves. Our struggle would not have succeeded if we didn't do so. On the issues that have been raised on the law, I'll deal with the judiciary aspects of it. I think the statement of the ANC yesterday has explained, but obviously this matter came out of the affidavit that was presented by the representative of our comrade Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngagula, and it's a matter that obviously will engage on internally. There are processes in the ANC. If indeed it's true, where the officials, the NWC, is at liberty to can engage on that particular issue. But otherwise, there's a member who is aggrieved by a particular situation. We cannot ignore the aggrieved, and we therefore definitely will attend to the matter as the African National Congress at the right time, and at the right part, the ANC will then respond on that particular issue adequately. If in the statement we still feel that it was not adequately handled, but I think the statement did adequately handle the matter, but it's still surfacing, Comrade Mahlengi. So if the officials will definitely engage, as they do, with quite sensitive matters that are difficult, complex, but we end up resolving them and working together as comrades within the African National Congress. I'm not sure if that was the one, and give it to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Obed. And also, just as an addition to indicate to that particular question, that the Integrity Commission of the ANC is seized with the matter, and true to our internal democracy and our internal control environment, the matter is being attended to. I know that the Integrity Committee has met and addressed the issue, but I'm also very keen, Junior and other colleagues, members of the media, not to discuss matters of that nature, because we always grant you an audience all the time. We are discussing the geopolitical situation, international solidarity, and internationalism, and whatever you call it, because we have a very strong story to tell about our manifesto in as far as that matter is concerned. We also want to use this presser to underscore the importance of solidarity with those that are worse off than us, particularly the people of Palestine, the children and the women of Palestine, the people of Western Sahara, and so on. And we would be really keen to hear what you think, or how you can help us to be transmitters of the message, or distributors of the message around conditions that are affecting oppressed people elsewhere, because that is what we went through ourselves as South Africans, but I don't want to be preaching. I just wanted to refocus the discussion away from some of these other vexing matters, because we can ventilate them elsewhere. I'm going to call, ask my comrade to respond to the other questions.
Thank you very much, Comrade Mahlengi. I think the first contribution, maybe just from my side, based on your instruction, is that you know, the media and everyone else speaks about the plight of the Palestine people. But what they equally fail to appreciate is that the plight of the Palestine people, it's about their self-determination. And self-determination is one of the indispensable rights enshrined in the United Nations Charter. And I think we obviously, as a member state of the UN, and as a champion of social justice and self-determination of the oppressed people, have a very particular responsibility. And I'm saying so because in 1948, we should not always speak about the conflict that started on the 7th of October. We should speak about 1948. So that should be the minimum reference points as it relates to the plight of the Palestine people. So it's 75 years. So when apartheid as an ideological orientation was instilled against the black oppressed people of South Africa, equally so, ladies and gentlemen of the Fourth Estate, that was the same thing that occurred against the people of Palestine. So the struggle, it's a protracted struggle of more than 75 years, where the Palestine people have pledged allegiance to the black oppressed. So our freedom, in as much as Nelson Mandela said, our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestine people. We could not have had our freedom if our liberation struggle was not aided by the oppressed people of Palestine. So we have a very unique responsibility to be true to our forebears, but also to continue to champion the nobility of the UN Charter. That applies equally to Western Sahara that has been colonized by the Kingdom of Morocco. You will recall, ladies and gentlemen, the Madrid Accords dating back to 1975, where the Spanish government decided to cede unilaterally the land of occupied people to the Kingdom of Morocco. And when we advance self-determination discussions with Morocco, it is to hold up the value of self-determination enshrined in the UN Constitution. Comrade Naledi have emphasized the unilateral coercive measures and economic sanctions against the people of Cuba. 62 years exactly, ladies and gentlemen, since 1962, where the Cubans has been leveled with unilateral economic blockade. It results in food deprivation, food insecurity, medical shortages, fuel shortages. We have an obligation to remind the US of their undertaking to subscribe to the UN Charter. Now, the only organization in the UN architecture, ladies and gentlemen, that have the privilege of leveling sanctions is the UN Security Council. It's the UN Security Council that have the singular privilege, and that's why when we speak about the unilateral coercive measures, such as also what is happening against the people of Zimbabwe, we speak about the fact that it's an antithesis to what the UN holds dear in terms of its value proposition. So I thought, Comrade Maslenke, I must clarify that, and I think as I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, I think the African National Congress, the ANC, has issued a statement on the recent election in West Africa, where you have a relatively young president, and I think we should be elated as the ANC because it speaks volumes about our intergenerational mission. The Secretary General of the ANC have taken the Fourth Estate in confidence, comrades, that almost 20% of everyone that is in an electable position in the ANC list across the country represent young people. So we are conscious about our responsibility to harness the youth dividend, and I think we have welcomed through the ANC government and the African National Congress the elections of that very relatively young President Faye. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That includes yourself, Comrade Alvin. You are still young and also a source of pride for our organization. Also serving in the role of the Deputy Minister. Of course, you're not here in that particular capacity, but as part of the International Relations Subcommittee of the National Executive Committee. I did wish, before Comrade Naledi closes us out, I did wish to underscore the point about the business of a better Africa and a better world. Underscore the point that the ANC is the only, we're not a party or a movement, the only movement in the continent that has been hard at work to support the oppressed peoples across the world, starting with the oppressed people of Palestine. It's not something that happened last year or the other year or that particular year. The ANC has been hard at work to challenge the economic blockade, in particular, economic blockade in Cuba. The ANC has been hard at work to fight for the liberation of the people, the Sahrawi people in Western Sahara. And we really do urge members of the media to make it their business to research these three parts of our world if we want to achieve a just, equitable, and fair, prosperous, where humanity lives better. I was in Western Sahara, Comrade Naledi and Comrade Obed and Alvin, a year ago, just after assuming this responsibility. And we were together, had the occasion to listen to horrible stories of women and children that are being violated day in and day out and night. South African media is not covering the story of Western Sahara. We ask you, colleagues, with utmost humility, to take some interest on matters that involve the dispossessed people in the same way that South Africa, some people in the fourth estate, took some interest in the stories of our dispossession back then. That is just the only thing I wanted to say. I'm simply encouraging the presser, I'm not the speaker. But I really need to say this because this item that we're dealing with in the ANC 2024 manifesto, the point I'm driving across is that actually we're just being, it's a continuum. This is who we've been. And this is why South Africa enjoys the democracy that it enjoys. It's precisely because of the work we've done for decades and decades in solidarity, because we ourselves enjoy our democracy because of those who did that for us as well. Thank you. Comrade Naledi.
Thank you very much, Comrade Mahlengi. I'm sure our colleagues in the media know that they live in one of the most incredible countries in the world in terms of our human rights policies and in terms of key issues such as media freedom. I've had experience recently of visiting countries that you often define as very advanced and modern, and the levels of media freedom are actually not what we have in South Africa. We're really an incredible country, and sometimes we need to, appreciate ourselves. So let me get to the questions. There are some citizens in countries where there's conflict and where we've withdrawn our embassy staff who have not been able to register. but we have a larger number of registered citizens outside South Africa than we've had in all previous elections, from the records I saw with the IEC when I met them this week. We have embassies that are closed in neighboring countries. Should those citizens wish to be registered, they can travel to those countries and register. For citizens who are in Israel, we have an embassy in Ramallah, and they can go and register there. So arrangements can and have been made in previous situations. On the court matters, my comrades have answered. I wasn't here to answer court issues on behalf of the African National Congress. It goes well beyond my foreign affairs remit. I am struggling to find, Karin, where I said that the world is a better world. What I said was, despite these negative trends, this inflection point offers the world's nations a unique opportunity to define a new world order based on shared bonds of common humanity. And where I used better, it was with respect to changing the world for the better through our work in BRICS, the African Union, United Nations, and SADC, as well as building a better Africa and a better world. There are many instances where I referred to better. But if you were to press me, I would say the world is better than it was 30 years ago, because I think there's more democracy, there's greater judicial independence in many, many countries, there's greater democratic participation, public institutions are more functional. I could cite instances across the continent in terms of economic progress and growth. In a number of African countries, there's been huge progress. The progressive developments in politics in Brazil, and it's joining the South as a progressive country. So there are many, many instances where I think there are better opportunities, but I don't deny that it's an extremely complex environment in which we work. On the South African position and the Palestine matter that we are so strong on, and our relationship with the United States of America, there would be several reasons which would make me believe that there could be a weakened relationship. But I believe that the relationship has improved. Why? Because our position is clearly understood. Two, because actions in the past few weeks are actions that reflect positions South Africa has been articulating for several months. The fact that America abstained on the ceasefire resolution, extremely important, when it had voted to veto on 3 previous. The fact that it is President Biden who said the borders for humanitarian aid must be opened, when we had said that 8 weeks ago. So I believe there's a commonality developing on our perspective that this oppression of Palestinian people, this genocide, which we believe is underway, cannot and must not continue. We had always said that it will touch civilians that are offering aid, and it has done so. Aid workers have been killed, and the 7 killed are not the first. Many more have been killed previously. Over 120 journalists have been murdered. The figures are horrendous. What has been allowed and permitted is terrible. But I think there's a clearer articulation of perspectives that are South African perspectives held long before we hear them from the most powerful countries. So what we've been doing, and including in our visit to the United States, we've really indicated that our relationship is a very diverse one with a wide range of platforms that shape the relationship. Palestine is not the only issue. It's an important one, but it's not the only one. We have an important trade relationship, and you would be able to read some of what we have been saying, because we've just sent an article through to the Financial Times, which we hope they will publish. Then we'll be able to see some of what we had communicated during the visit to the United States. I think we need to continue to work at the relationship. We need to build understanding, but those remarks I began with of sovereignty are very, very important. We can never impose our foreign policy on another country, nor should there be an expectation that we will just mirror the foreign policy of another country. And I had thought, as South Africans, we would appreciate that it's important we have an independence on these issues. Otherwise, we merely become a follower of others, and we cannot agree to that. On genocide commemoration, South Africa has been invited, and South Africa, through me and others, will be attending. It is an important commemoration. I can't remember who asked the question. It was you, sorry. You are? All right, the SABC. And what is your name? Oh, Hikab Kotesi, yes. So I think we never ask questions about commemoration when it's the Holocaust commemoration. But when it's genocide in Rwanda, you pose the question. Countries can decide what it is they commemorate, just as we on March 21 commemorate the events of Sharpeville. So must the world commemorate other tragic events that they have experienced. And I believe that given what the world is experiencing today with the onslaught against the people of Palestine, it is important that we mark in very direct terms the question of genocide. So I think it's important that South Africa is there, represented at very senior levels, to show and stand shoulder to shoulder with the people of Rwanda, but also to confirm that when we are against genocide as South Africa, it's a genuine commitment. On the matter of South African citizens fighting in Israel, we have legislation in South Africa called the Regulation of Foreign Military Assistance Act. Through that act, we have structures in government that can be applied to if one wants to go and fight in a foreign conflict. But if you just go out, that is actually infringing the act and is considered a criminal conduct. So we are working with humanitarian and human rights organizations to gather information on South Africans who may be carrying out such criminal acts. And we hope finally that our prosecutorial authorities will act as the legislation stipulates. But I would really think we need to know who these individuals are, how many they are. We've had previous records of some, and we've not used the legislation. I hope that this time we would. Well, on the recent visit to the USA, I think it was a very good visit for me. I met legislators, I met organizations of civil society, both those supporting Palestine, as well as those not supporting Palestine. I met various media houses, I had many, many interviews, also participated in think tanks sessions, so it went well. I unfortunately didn't meet one of the legislators I wanted to meet, who's Representative James, who has crafted the legislation against South Africa, or calling for a review of the relationship between the United States and South Africa. I'm not sure what the intention of the review would be. The bill has gone through the committee stage with some support and some opposition. As one of the journalists in our country celebrated, it had majority support in the committee, and I'm surprised a South African will be so happy about that, but I don't quite understand sometimes our patriotism. But it was a good visit, and I'm glad I went, and I have advised that when the next government is appointed, I think there should be continued people-to-people contact on strengthening this relationship, as there should be with all countries with which we have relations. On the bombing in Russia, the concert hall attack, we have issued a statement, and this was publicly conveyed to all media throughout the world. On the Iran embassy matter, we have issued a statement both condemning the attack on the embassy, not just with respect to the loss of life, but also the disrespect for provisions of international law, which say diplomatic missions cannot be targets of such attacks. So we have had a very clear statement citing the appropriate policy positions internationally, because diplomatic institutions are inviolate in terms of the Vienna Convention and other laws. So clearly we have issued a statement in this regard. On Senegal, my excitement is, as Deputy Minister Botha said, young person, young leader, but more is that President Macky Sall decided not to stand for a third term and allowed democracy to take its course. For me, that was the most important development, and I am hopeful that our continent, as we proceed to many, many elections this year, will show similar signs of robust democracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Naledi, and thank you very much to the ones on the left wing of the table, the two members of the National Executive Committee who are quite invested in the work of international solidarity, as we historically call it. And thank you very much, Comrade Naledi, for taking all of those questions and going into a lot of detail. At this point in time, I'd like to suggest that we adjourn, and thank you very much for having come through and for your questions, and hopefully we have comprehensively responded. I do believe so. Thank you very much. The briefing is adjourned.